The tribunal investigating the bribery allegations against retired Supreme Court Judge Justice Philip Tunoi is set to make a ruling on whether it will continue with its sitting after the Supreme Court effectively retired the judge last week. The tribunal adjourned on Tuesday for parties to study a ruling that retired him alongside Deputy Chief Justice Kalpana Rawal. The Judicial Service Commission has already advertised the vacancy for Tunoi's position, as well as that of the now retired Deputy Chief Justice and that of the Chief Justice. The judge was suspended over allegations that he received a 200 million shilling bribe from Nairobi County Governor Evans Kidero to influence the outcome of an election petition against him. Let us now listen in to this morning's proceedings.
Ruling that the 5 judges of the Supreme Court delivered last week, and we have pondered with Mr. Wachira as to the impact of those final orders on the proceedings of this tribunal. Mr. Chairman, we are of the considered position that the ruling of the Supreme Court has no direct impact on the proceedings of this tribunal. The ruling of the Supreme Court decided matters between the parties to that petition. It was a ruling in personam. It was not a ruling in rem. And we are of the position, or we are of the considered position, that it therefore has no impact on the proceedings of this tribunal. However, Mr. Chairman, and importantly, the decision of the Supreme Court that the tribunal asked us to look at made it possible for the Judicial Service Commission, who are the employers of the judge, to take a decision about the employment or the continued employment of Mr. Justice Tunoi as a judge of the Supreme Court of this Republic. The Chief Registrar of the Judiciary has shared a copy of a letter dated the 15th of June 2016. Ostensibly, Mr. Chairman, retiring Mr. Justice Tunoi as a judge of the Supreme Court.
You will give us copies of that letter then?
Yes, I'll give you copies of that letter. Mr. Chairman, it is our view that the impact of the decision of the Supreme Court is therefore this. It made it possible for the Judicial Service Commission to take the decision to retire the judge as they have done. And what then affects the continued, or what affects the proceedings of this tribunal, is the decision to retire the judge. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I will take a few moments and submit on what we believe is the impact of the judge's retirement by the judicial.
And for a summary of what really happened in the morning proceedings, let us now join our reporter, Michelle Ngele, who has been closely following up these proceedings for us from the onset, joining us from the anniversary towers for an update on some of the highlights of what really happened in the morning session. Thank you for joining us on News Desk, Michelle. Kindly just keep us up to speed with what happened in the morning and what we should be expecting in the afternoon.
Well, Akisa, first of all, the tribunal has reconvened and announced that they will be convening back on Monday at 11 a.m. as it cannot quite give the ruling on the status of the tribunal just yet. Remember, the main aim this morning was to determine the impact of the Supreme Court ruling on the life of the tribunal after the lawyers had ample time, just slightly over a week, to review the ruling of the Supreme Court and assess its impact. Now, when the tribunal's proceedings began this morning, Paul Nyamodi, who is the lead counsel representing assisting counsel, who is acting as a prosecutor in this case, seems to agree that the tribunal should no longer continue with its proceedings based on the very fact that they do not have a subject now, and that is Philip Tunoi. Although he says that the ruling of the Supreme Court does not have a direct impact on the tribunal, what impact it tribunal is the fact that that ruling gave leeway to the Judicial Service Commission to retire Philip Tunoi. But he did bring up an interesting point, and is something that is yet to be discussed, as to whether the tribunal should continue with its proceedings till the very end, despite the fact that it does not have a subject, and that is something the tribunal will be ruling on Monday. But the counsel representing Philip Tunoi, and that is Fred Ngatia, came ahead to say that there is really no legal letter of retirement that has been issued to Philip Tunoi. When the proceedings began, the chair of the tribunal, Sharad Rao, started by reading a letter from the judiciary which expressed Tunoi's retirement to the tribunal. But that letter was dated the 16th of June 2016. Interestingly, lead counsel Paul Nyamodi also had another letter allegedly from the judiciary with the same effect of communicating Tunoi's retirement to the tribunal, but that letter was dated the 15th of June. So the issue of the different dates of that retirement letter was subject to conversation here today, and Fred Ngatia dismissed that letter of retirement, both of them really, based on the fact that that letter had the judiciary letterhead but was signed by the Chief Registrar, Anna Madi, but in her capacity as Secretary of the Judicial Service Commission. Now, legally and according to the High Court, which is the only organ that is mandated in determining the retirement of a judge, a letter of retirement can only be drafted by the judiciary and not the Judicial Service Commission. So Tunoi's lawyer, Fred Ngatia, continues to argue that as much as Tunoi's position has been advertised as vacant, as much as the Supreme Court ruling rendered him a retired judge, he is yet to receive a formal letter of retirement, and by that basis, the tribunal can still continue with its sittings. Akisa.
With the issues with the dates as to when this particular directive or this particular letter was sent out from the Judicial Service Commission or the Secretary, which is Anne Amadi, once the tribunal reconvenes, what exactly do we expect to happen?
Well, Akisa, we expect the tribunal to give a ruling on just to determine whether Philip Tunoi was retired according to law, and that means a retirement letter drafted by the judiciary and signed by the judiciary itself, and not a member of the Judicial Service Commission. Now, should that be the decision of the tribunal that Tunoi has been retired according to law, then that means that no more proceedings can take place with the tribunal, and that they would have to draft a report which would be presented to President Uhuru Kenyatta. But remember, Akisa, we also yet to determine what the impact of the Supreme Court ruling would be on the evidence that has so far been gathered by the tribunal. And so there is that hope, albeit very small, that the amount of evidence gathered could allow the tribunal to then continue its proceedings until the very end. I remember there are a few key witnesses that yet to appear before the tribunal. Some will be recalled, including the whistleblower Geoffrey Kiplagat himself. And so should the decision of the tribunal be that Tunoi has not been retired according to law, then they will be proceeding with the rest of the witnesses. Akisa.
All right, thank you very much, Michelle, for giving us that update. We'll definitely be linking up with you later for more information on what is happening on that side. Michelle Ngele, our reporter, is joining us from the anniversary TARS.